watching on YouTube, so that's great. So what we're going to do here is this is the agenda that you see up here. We're going to do a little bit of event welcome and introductions, and then we have a few presentations that we're going to cover today, and then we'll have a panel discussion at the end. And so what I'd like to do is ask everyone to hold your questions until we get to the panel discussion. We'll have plenty of time for people to ask questions. Now, since this is the first time that we've done this, some of you are probably experiencing some technical difficulties, or it's a little bit confusing. We understand that, and we ask for your patience. And I'd love to get feedback, at the end from you guys, either via email or in person, about how this experience was so that we can make it better. So can we go back to the first slide, Steve, if you don't mind? Okay, that's fine. We can go right into this slide. This is fine. So the VR Association, we're a global industry association, and the whole goal of the association is really to foster a collaboration between individuals and companies and organizations to accelerate the adoption of virtual and augmented reality. We have various programs that we offer around the world, such as conferences, training sessions, and of course, chapter events like what we're having here today. And the whole purpose of the organization is, to accelerate anybody's growth, knowledge, and connections. So, what's exciting about this is being our first event in virtual reality. We hope that some of you folks are able to make some connections with some new folks, and let's figure out how we can drive things forward. Next slide. So around the world, the association has, I think we're up to about 60-some chapters now, and about 4,200 companies, brands, and schools, and over 26,000 professionals that are participating in this ecosystem. So it really is a global association, and what we can really help individuals and organizations in Central Florida to do is to be able to use the global association to reach out and network globally, but also give technology organizations and individuals around the world an opportunity to get connected here in Central Florida. Next slide, please. So we have a number of folks from our local chapter that participate in some of our global committees. We have Alethea Duhan, Dr. Duhan from the Air Force, who's co-chair of the Aerospace Committee. We have Kevin Carpenter, who is co-chair of the Energy Committee. Kevin's with Siemens. And just recently, John Gress, who is the academic director at the Digital Animation and Visual Effects Studio at Universal Studios, was just appointed as the co-chair of the Universities and Colleges Committee. So that's a great representation that we have out of our community on some of these important global committees. And also just this week, we announced that Dan Ayub, who's the general manager of Microsoft's education business, was appointed as the other co-chair. So through these committees, we look to target specific industry areas, technology areas that are relevant to those specific industries, and publish best practices, case studies, and share different technologies that are applicable to those industries. So everyone, join me in congratulating John for his appointment on the committee. So I'm going to do an emoji here, all these claps. There we go. Congratulations, John. All right, next slide, please. And I'd like to thank two very important people that helped make this event possible. One of the things that I've been really appreciative of is the collaboration that we have here in our community and the willingness for people to really step up and take time out of their days to help. So Fraser Bowie is an author, an advisor. He's also founder of the Bowie Group, who helps organizations implement VR and AR. Fraser's claim to fame was that he was one of the original folks that introduced VR to Verizon and got VR implemented in a lot of their commercial stores. So he's got lots of experience in the technology space. He is our organizer and event organizer today. And Fraser, thank you very much for helping us get this started. And also Steve Lewis. So when I asked Fraser if he could help out with this, he immediately turned over to Steve and asked Steve to help produce it. So Steve is our producer today, and he has a team of folks that are helping him produce this event. This was no small feat. They had to set up this whole virtual room. decorate it, if you will, for lack of a better term, pull all the content together, be able to figure out how to make it to work in this environment. So, very appreciative of the volunteer efforts that these gentlemen and their teams have put in. So thank you both very much. Next slide. Okay, so the first speaker I'd like to introduce is Kunal Patel. Kunal is the CTO of a company called BrandX, but he's also the director of the Orlando Game Space. And what Kunal is going to talk to us today about is what the game space does. And on a personal note, many of you know that recently I joined Unity Technologies here in Orlando to look after business development and strategy and help Unity establish a presence here on the East Coast. And immediately, Kunal and Sean and Kyle and a bunch of other folks at the game space reached out to me and said, hey, if you don't have an office yet, why don't you come and look at, sharing the facilities that we have here at the Orlando Game Space? And at first I thought it was kind of interesting, an enterprise business going to work in the game space, but I learned very quickly that there's a lot more going on in the game space than just game development. And so Kunal, I'm really appreciative of the hospitality you've put out for us. And I'm going to turn it over to you so you can talk about what the game space does.
Sure thing. Thank you. Thanks a lot, John. Can everybody hear me okay? I just want to make sure I'm hearing my voice is getting out there. Yeah? Okay, awesome. Yep. Thank you. So thank you, John, for the introduction. Again, my name is Kunal Patel from the Orlando Game Space. I'm the executive director there. I'm the crazy person that said, like, hey, let's just get this started. So I guess I'm the founder of that as well. It's definitely very community driven. Real quick, is it possible to go back to the previous slide? The next slide has a lot more words, and I think, like, maybe just talk a little bit about, like, why the Orlando Game Space. Well, the thing is, like, game development is very hard, and it's been, a major industry for the past several decades. But, what I really believe is that all this work that went into creating these virtual worlds, within creating all this interaction, all these communities, it's now really converging in a way that it's affecting the entire world. Healthcare and all these other industries space are all looking at the video game developers now. And the thing that's always been very true, I think, in my personal view, is that it's not easy to create a video game company or a video game tech company. So the game space is more than a physical space. It's a physical space that is all geared towards creating long-term sustainable success for interactive and gaming tech companies. Next slide. So the barriers of success are very high, and we want to lower that barrier. So it's easy to have a place to have your office or grow your office, hire people, have your space to grow your company at very low cost. And then we believe that the people that are super talented in this domain of game development, they're the ones that are best positioned to change the world. They're the ones that are going to foster innovation, really tackle a lot of the frontier tech that's needed in automotive, in healthcare. So over the past 3 years, we've grown. We started with, we originally started as a 2,000 square foot office. Now we are in a 10,000 square foot office in downtown Orlando. And we had 4 studios. Now we have almost maybe 20 different studios and teams that are in the game space. And each and every single one of them may not be making video games, but they're all using gaming technologies in some way. And that's like AR, VR, AR, AI, machine learning, just all these various tools and tech that's used within gaming. But you may be working in healthcare. You may be working in music, the music production industry, or you may be working on a VR or AR creation distribution platform like myself with BrandX. But you'll see that everybody here is somehow related to games, and they all help each other out. They all work with each other. They work on projects together. There's a huge synergy that happens between everybody. And I mean, you even see that we have a video game specific chiropractor that keeps us all healthy as well. I think next slide. Yeah. So what do we offer? Well, more than the physical space, what's really important is that it's curated co-working. So you can't just be anybody off the street and come here. You really have to be talented. You have to have something behind you. You have to be working on something interesting. Because what happens is every time a new Lego piece is added, the game space becomes better. So, when we had John join us, John Cunningham, we believed that was going to make us better, and it's going to make him better as well. So every time that happens, we're just growing. So it's curated co-working, and then we try to have the right networking, the right events, the VR/AR association type of events with us as well, because that creates a difference. And then biz dev. So when you guys have projects out there in the world that you need help, you can turn to the game space to find its members, which are all like excellent badasses. That's the only way to put it. They're super talented, super knowledgeable, and they can help you. And when you come to the game space, that's what you're going to find. And then we try to lower those barriers of success, have the equipment, have the services, and then have the education and training so that the artists become better artists, programmers become better programmers, and everybody just becomes better in some way through the workshops and things that we have in our space. Next slide. And here you see that over time, we've just been leveling up, and that's not going to stop. But, it began with, of course, video games, making console games, mobile games, things that go into that, artists, programmers, designers. Over time, as we were increasing our abilities, we noticed we also started working in different industries: space, healthcare, theme park, hospitality, automotive, mobility, and our skill sets also were growing too. And so over time, that's what's happening. So the game space is more than just games, it's gaming technologies. And when it all comes together, we're able to use all that background as game developers to really kind of change that world. And it comes from the density that's created at the Orlando Game Space. So really hope that all of you stay in touch. You can visit the OrlandoGamespace.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can look for any one of the members that are there. John, Sean from CyberDreams, Kyle from 302, myself, Kunal from BrandX. And I hope I get to connect with all of you afterwards and even in the other real world as well. John, hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Really appreciate that, Kunal. And once again, even if you're not a member of the game space, I think the organization is still there to help facilitate. Correct, Kunal? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to keep a touch point on everything, so we'll help guide you. So definitely connect.
Okay, and then Kunal's going to be on the panel discussion here at the end of the session. Okay, so look, we're making progress. We made it through our first presentation. Nothing broke yet. So, our next speaker, Sean, could you please come on up here? Where's Sean at? Come on up here. I'd like to introduce you all to Sean Pinnock. Sean is the CEO and founder of CyberDreams, a company that produced or created Virtual Battlegrounds. And, Sean is going to share with us today his journey as one of the first VR game developers that has had a produced game on Steam. Can you go to the next slide? So I wanted to share this photo with everyone. After the launch of Virtual Battlegrounds, at one point, they made it to number 2 on the Steam VR list. So let's give Sean a big round of, let's see here, if I can do this. There we go, claps. All right. So, Sean, that's no small achievement. I mean, that's fantastic. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you and tell us your journey.
Cool. Thanks a lot, John. I appreciate that. This is going to be kind of an introspective look at the last 3 years of development from conception to finally release, and I'm going to kind of go through each of the steps that we've had to go through to get to where we are today. See whenever you're ready. The next slide. Yeah, so I've titled this. So this is kind of fun, right? I'm a game developer. The Mystical Journeys of a VR Game Developer, a postmortem on the creation of Virtual Battlegrounds. See if you go to the next slide. So a little bit more about me. Obviously, I created Virtual Battlegrounds. I'm the CEO of a company called CyberDreams, the company that built Virtual Battlegrounds. But before then, I launched a few AAA titles while I was at EA, like Madden and NBA. helped out in some others too. Led teams to build a number of multiple indie titles, so small independent games. My first game I built in college called Black Sea Odyssey, and I've dozens of others I've touched or built, or they're all over the internet itch, a lot of free ones. And then on top of that, I'm a game development and technology community activist in Florida, in Central Florida. I started a lot of collegiate game development organizations. I'm very active in a lot of other organizations, philanthropic. I try and help raise money for charities and that kind of thing, and give back wherever I can along the way. Next slide for me, please, Steve. So I'm going to kind of, like I was saying before, I'm going to go through year by year and really dive deep into how we went from conception idea to finally release of Virtual Battlegrounds, and some key takeaways, a quick postmortem at the end. Next slide for me, please. Okay, so before building Virtual Battlegrounds, right? I first asked, okay, what should I start building? And this isn't my first rodeo, right? I put a few games out. Some failed miserably, and that always sucks. And then some did okay. I've never really had a big success. And one of the things, I've done a lot of reading, especially while I was working in other companies, and before I really got back into this, I was doing a lot of reading, a lot of thinking. And one of the books I came across talked about how before you build something, especially a video game, right, it takes 2 or 3 years of your life if you're going to be serious about it, and sometimes more than that. Why don't we find out if people want this, right? So when I started the company in 2017, I started doing some research, and myself included, VR users really wanted big content, grand scale content. That's something that really didn't exist, especially at that time, and most of the games were like wave shooters, and they felt like demos, right? And I wanted to build something that felt like a full game. So that I knew. And Battle Royales were on the rise, too. This is before Fortnite, but when we decided to build Virtual Battlegrounds, I saw a trend with PUBG and some other games that, I thought Battle Royales were going to be really, really popular. And obviously Fortnite came out, and other not VR, but other battle royales came out and really accelerated that genre, so the timing was really good for us. So I even did some community asking, and I asked the community, some different communities, what kind of game they'd like for us to make. And the decision was made to make a VR battle royale. Next slide for me, please, Steve. Here you can actually see a Reddit post I made in 2017 asking the community what they wanted us to make. And none of these suggestions originally were a battle royale, but everyone was like, hey, make a battle royale. And I'm like, all right, I guess this is proof. Next slide for me, please, Steve. So 2017 continued. I built a prototype very quickly, proof of concept, made some videos. It went really viral. You can't find those videos anymore because I think they're terrible now, and I deleted all of them, so you can't find them. But they went viral, and I raised a small amount of cash investment through private investment. And I was like, hey, I'm going to be first to market. That was the goal. And then I had a competitor right after those videos went viral. I had a competitor reskin their game and get to market before us that year. So that kind of sucked. But it would end up taking me a lot longer than I figured to make this game. Next slide for me, please. So 2018 starts, and I really get on the grind for making this game. And finished many of the core mechanics, and the goal is a quick summer 2018 release date. So I really wanted to make this game very quickly. I was building it by myself at the time. I held a private alpha with over 1,000 users in May, and it went terribly. It wasn't ready. It wasn't something, the game. It's just a really big game, and for me to try and build that by myself, in that short amount of time, it just wasn't realistic. And reality hits, and it hits hard. And I'm like, I take some money for private investment. I quit my job. I was really serious about this at this time. And I came to the realization that there's just no way that I could do this alone. Next slide for me, please. So I started building a team. I hire many of my first developers, and I start an intern team. I have to be as lean as possible because I don't have a ton of cash myself, and the investment I raised wasn't enough to support a full team. I end up cycling through a lot of developers. And my role ends up switching from engineer to manager. I have an engineering background. I've got some experience in leadership, but not a lot of experience in like production and running a team. And I ended up getting kind of like hitting another roadblock, a throughput problem where I was having a really hard time managing the team and being an engineer and being productive. So I ended up bringing a producer onto the team who I met. And this is when I moved into the game space, and I'm really grateful that I did. And his name's Chad Hoover, and he helped me bring my team and my organization up to the next level. Next slide for me, please. So 2019, so a whole year goes by, and obviously we didn't release the game. I just realized it wasn't going to happen, and in order to hit the quality threshold, now especially that I had competitors in the space, I had to hit a certain quality threshold in order to get the game where I want it to be. And by 2019, I've assembled a really solid team now, a team that's still with me. Some of the guys are actually here in the room with me now. They're recording this, and I'm really incredibly grateful to the team. And but yeah, we missed our 2018 goals, and even our 2019 release date seemed skeptical, and I needed more money to keep the ship afloat. So we end up looking into other business sectors to fund development, and we raised a little bit more capital. Next slide for me, please. So we ended up discovering a huge need for VR, AR talent in Central Florida, and we began supporting a number of mid-sized and large-sized businesses develop VR and AR content. By the end of the year, we've worked with a lot of companies like NASA, Dave & Buster's, Lockheed Martin, and many others. And our service business revenue ends up eclipsing all the investment we raised. So it was really kind of came by surprise. And I met some other business developers in the Atlanta game space that showed me the ropes. And I'd been engineering this stuff for so long that, all I had to do was get in front of these people and tell them my story. And they're like, yeah, we could use guys like you that can really build this stuff. And that was me and my background. And it just kind of took itself by storm from there, really unexpected. So we have all the revenue coming in now from contractual business that we're able to support, the development of Virtual Battlegrounds. Next slide for me, please. Next slide for me, please, Steve. Cool. So this is us at Guardian Con. As you can see, it was one man. A couple years before then, and then all of a sudden, boom! Look at all of us. And here we're presenting Virtual Battlegrounds at Guardian Con, a really amazing expo here in Central Florida. One that I helped put together for the game development portion of it. We actually, that expo actually raised $3 million for charity. So it was really amazing to be a part of that. And here we're demoing our game there. So that was I think that was our first, the alpha went really bad a couple years before, and then we showed the game here, and it went really, really well. And it was really reaffirming to all the effort we put into the game, but we still weren't ready for release. We knew we had more work to do. Next slide for me, please. So continue growing. 2020 hits, we continue growing our business. We reached 20 hires, so we're getting pretty big now at this point. And we aim for a realistic date for Virtual Battlegrounds. And then coronavirus hits, and half our contracting business is cut immediately, so there goes half our revenue stream. And we pushed for an earlier release date and have the whole team behind Ruby on. So on top of the virus hitting, which really kind of revenue stream, but we also saw a market opportunity. The good with the bad, right? We saw a market opportunity that there were so many people at home playing games, and we didn't know how long this was going to last, and we didn't know what was going on, and we felt a little I think rushed to get to market. So crunch ensues. And go ahead, next slide for me, please, Steve. So crunch ensues, and we want to get to market as soon as possible. And the game is released on April 15th, and we reached number 2 best-selling VR game. So that was a huge, it's like when you're working on something like this for years, right? And it's a huge personal, emotional, physical investment, and so much happens outside of your life, outside of this. When this finally was out, it was such a big relief for myself and my team. We'd been working on it for so long. And the launch week was mixed. On one hand, financially, we recouped our investment, our cash investment in a week. So that was amazing, right? But on the other hand, we had a lot of mixed reviews because I think we could have QA'd it better. This is like a learning experience. But overall, I'd say it was a pretty big success for us, right? Going from kind of an idea, right, to actually getting this thing out the door and then reaching number 2 on Steam. And then crunch continues, though, because we got to solve these unanticipated issues for at least another month. And the game remains top 20 best-selling for the next couple of months forward. And I think we got a video of one of the trailers we put on. I remember. I think it's pretty loud. Do we got that running here? Fraser, think we can get that playing?
Yeah, let's roll it. It's nice and loud. If you haven't experienced it, this is the way to do it. was awesome. Let's show them some love.
Wow, that's a lot of emojis, guys. Look at all those emojis. Cool. So next steps for Virtual Battlegrounds, right? So that was huge. We got it out the door, but we're not done. There's more to do. The game's had some success, but we think we can push it even further. So we're still in the top 50 for VR games, and we're fixing a few core issues that we think is causing low player retention. And we're also working on a PSVR port, which we think could 2 to 10x our user base. We'd really like to be a PlayStation 5 launch title if that's possible. And our goal is to get back in the top 10 during holiday season. So the game's not done by any stretch. We're still growing our contractual business, and we're pushing this as far as we can. We'd like to, a lot of these VR games have been mainstays for multiple years, have very long tails of success, and we think we can be that. But it's going to require a lot more work from us. We're going to do a lot of marketing, a lot more development, and so we're still on that path right now. Next slide for me, please. So so we've talked about, my journey, right? Like, you've got a very personal kind of journey on what we've gone through as a team, what I've gone through as a team, and there's definitely more. There's a lot of all-nighters myself and my team members have pulled. There's a lot of, should we release the game now? Should we release it later? There's a lot of that. But let's talk about looking back. What were some of the mistakes I made? So I didn't realize just how hard it would be to make a VR battle royale. And so I'm a very good. This is I don't know how, it's kind of weird. Right, this is my perspective, right? I consider myself to be a very good game developer. I consider myself to be a very good engineer. I've got a lot of experience building games, but I was overconfident in my abilities, and I was unrealistic in what I could achieve as a solo developer. And I just didn't realize how hard it would be to make a VR battle royale, multiplayer and virtual reality, and this new medium. And I'd made a lot of games, but it just took it to one level, and I wasn't ready for that. And like I said before, without my team, there's no way I could have built this game. So with that being said, I should have raised more capital from the start to get to market sooner. I would have liked to have got to market in 2019 or 2018. And I think with more capital, we could have done that. I would have been able to have a bigger team quicker. The excitement for the game I have now, there's bigger competitors that are coming into play soon. Competitors that have raised a whole lot of money and have really serious products. And I'd like to have gotten a bigger head start on them. I never found in our original artistic style for the game. I would have liked to have had a lead artist that was dedicated to the project from the start, and we never really found one. So there's a lot of incohesion from art styles. And it should have done a better job planning ways for players to play with other players. It's one of the big retention issues we're having right now is, VR in general, only really whatever games are in the top 10 at any one point in time are having a high enough concurrent user base to support a game like a Battle Royale. So once we slid off that top 20 mark, especially during odd times of the night, we're having not enough players to really support a Battle Royale. So we should have thought of better ways to keep that, and that's something we're working on right now, which we think will help a lot with retention so that people that are playing in New Zealand at 3 o'clock in the morning can find other people to play with. So it's something we're working on right now. Next slide for me, please. So things we did right. The team that we built is amazing, in my opinion. All the people that have come on are amazing, and we can do, I think, almost anything we want from here. So the sky's the limit. On top of a great team, we've built a solid gamer community. We have a very active Discord. We've got a lot of influencers that love to play our game. And there's no way without them as well we could have built the game. A lot of these guys have been testing the game for us every month for the last couple of years, giving us feedback. And these people are very active in the VR community. A VR Battle Royale is the right choice. It's very clear based on the numbers that a lot of people wanted this type of game. So it was, I think, a smart decision to build a game like that. So not releasing the game earlier when we could have, there was a lot of pressure for me to put the game out earlier. A lot of people were like, hey, Sean, when's this game going to get done? I think I got asked that by at least a handful of people every month, and I didn't know the answer, to be honest. I knew it would be done when it was done. So not releasing the game earlier when we could have, I think, was the right choice. And then getting into contract and fund development, definitely another smart choice, and we're really going to grow that side of our business now. Next slide for me, please. So key takeaways. So this is my advice to everyone in this room, or maybe not everyone, but at the very least, anyone that wants to start a game studio and build games for themselves independently. I'm really speaking to you. That might not be a lot of people in here, but I know this kind of advice really would have been helpful for me. So rule number one is to make a good game. And I know that's like, Sean, like, make a good game, right? Everyone knows that. Obviously make a good game. But I'm like, no, you don't understand. Make a good game. Like, this is like, so first off, like, most games fail, right? Like 95% of games fail. And I think a lot of this is just because people aren't making good games. And I myself have been in this boat where, and a lot of times it just comes from inexperience, but you want to get something done to get it done quick, and it's a really competitive market, guys, and you have to make a good product. And I don't think our game's perfect, but I would at least consider it to be good, right? And the next thing is the game needs to have a hook. So it can't just be good. I've seen a lot of even good games fail, but your game needs to have a hook as well, and the better the hook, the worse the game can be, and it can be successful. And if the game's got a really good hook and it's a really good game, then it can be very successful, right? For us, that was a VR battle royale, so it needs to have something that sells itself. My next piece of advice, good visuals always sell. You want to look for a 1.5x virality. This is just some terminology that I picked up from reading a lot of marketing books and that kind of thing. But when you share something like social media, that kind of thing, you want at least 1.5 more people to share it for your organic network, right? Let's say you got 1,000 friends, right? You want, of those 1,000 friends, you want it to extend out another 1.5 times. And then that has an exponential effect at that point, right? Like, kind of like this lovely coronavirus we have right now, right? It has an exponential effect. Probably a terrible joke to make right now, sorry. But it has an exponential effect, right? Where every person that sees it, they want to share it to more people. And you need that 1.5x. If you're below a 1.0 threshold, then your product immediately dies at your list of friends. And we have that with our product where it has that natural virality. A lot of people share it that I've never met. A lot of big influencers share it that I've never met. Next thing is big games require big effort to be well done. Yeah, and this is kind of obvious, right? And it's something, had to experience Virtual Battlegrounds. Virtual Battlegrounds is a big game. It's not meant to be built by one person. It's a very big game, and it requires a lot of effort to be well done. And really, let's talk more about the next point, and I'll kind of get into that. So big doesn't always mean better, right? So a good example is Beat Saber, right? If we had chosen to make a game like Beat Saber, we might have actually had a release date in 2018. But I think in terms of the likelihood of your success is how good your idea is multiplied by the execution of it, right? You guys might have heard of this before, but something like Beat Saber to me is like a 10 on how good of an idea it is, right? On a 1 to 10 scale with like a 10 execution, right? Like they did perfect, and their game is extremely well done. I'd say Virtual Battlegrounds, in terms of an idea, is maybe an 8, and the execution was maybe a 6, in my opinion. Maybe a battle royale could even be a 10, to be honest, but there's no way we could get a 10 execution on a battle royale. We just don't have the team for that. Look, I think a good example of a game that got a 10 on a battle royale is Call of Duty Warzone. They absolutely nailed the battle royale, but they also spent, I think, $250 million building that game, right? So there's no way we could really do that. But it was still, enough, I think, in order to pass the threshold of success or of a good game. Next slide for me, please. So some of the key takeaways: build a list of your community ASAP. Like I said before, there's no way we could have built this game without our gamers that are playing it and giving us feedback constantly, and they also were white knights for us when we did release. Game design for VR is nothing like flat screen. Throw most of your original conceptions away. Seriously, you are inventing stuff constantly when you're in VR because answers are not yet invented. I think this is a big part of why AAA developers are afraid to make VR content, is because nobody really knows what's right and what's wrong yet. Now, some stuff is becoming standardized. That's something that I had to deal with. I had wanted to invent almost everything in Virtual Battlegrounds, but I didn't understand that, no, there's a certain way to reload a gun right now in VR. And if you stray outside of that, you're going to have a core user base that's upset because they've been playing other VR games all the time, like Pavlov. And so there are some things that are becoming standardized, but we definitely invented a lot of stuff too, like the climbing in our game, the zip lining, the skydiving, the swimming. It's all invented by us, and even a lot of the gun controls are invented by us. And that's not the case if you're going to go and play, a flat screen game, right? Like all that stuff is standardized. If you play a game with a controller, your left analog stick is for moving and your right analog stick for rotation. That's standard. Right, A's to jump. VR gamers need lots of comfort options. So not only do you have to invent lots of stuff, you have to then tack on tons of ways for people to feel comfortable inside of VR, because this, like I said, every person is super tuned in the way they want to play and the way they they do or don't get sick, or however it is they want to experience an application. So we had to create a ton of options. If you go inside of our options menu, it's like 6 pages of options. It's kind of crazy. Next slide for me, please. So making games is really hard. Like seriously, really, really hard. Independent studios especially, like I said, at least 95% of games fail. You must be willing to sacrifice. VR multiplayer dependent games can struggle with player concurrency. And I knew this going into it. We have to be top 10 to maintain that concurrency, so you have to plan around that. And technology is shifting quickly. One of the things that happened to us that I wasn't really prepared for was the Quest release. Like I said before, when we started development in 2017, the Quest wasn't even an idea yet, right? Like Oculus hadn't even started talking about it. When they announced it in like late 2018, we're like, crap, we've been developing a really big game for desktops. Now they have a mobile chipset device. It's probably going to take the world by storm. How are we going to deal with that? So technology shifts quickly. You want to plan for it as good as you can. Obviously, that's not something we prepared for. We don't know if we're going to do a Quest port, but we really did not plan for it. And it would be pretty hard for us to do that at this point. Next slide for me, please. All right, so my final advice, like I said before, and this is kind of a joke, guys. Making games is really, really hard, and I really can't stress enough, especially as an independent studio. So my advice to you aspiring independent game developers out there is seriously, don't make games. Just don't do it. And for the love of good things, if you do decide to make games, don't go out solo to make the first VR Battle Royale or an MMORPG or something else crazy like that. That's the advice you hear online all the time, and I saw it 1,000 times, right? Unless you're like me, a masochist-obsessed, game-loving maniac, in which case, then don't let anyone tell you what you can or can't do, because it will get hard. Others will doubt you, and you will doubt yourself at times, but stick it through and do it anyway. I believe in you. Just remember, the bigger the reward, the bigger the sacrifice, and you will fail, and you will sacrifice. But even if you stick it through to the end, you too can win. So, next slide for me, please. That's it, guys. Thank you all very much. If you have any questions, this is my personal contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
All right, Sean, that was really awesome. Thank you so much. So I think Sean is going to be on the panel discussion at the end, so hold your questions. I guess my comment would be it takes a lot to stand out in front of a group after you just launched a game and to have the level of humility and genuosity that you've shared with us, Sean. So we really appreciate it. Okay, so
John, real quick, I just want to say I do see that people have their hands raised. We'll get to you when the panel starts after the next.
Okay, so Kyle Morrand, come on up. And by the way, we're doing pretty good on time. It's 12:50 now, so we're doing very well on time. So I'd like to introduce Kyle. Kyle's a CEO and technologist of 302 Interactive. And as I've mentioned over the last few months, I've gotten to know Kyle pretty well working there in the game space. And I just want to say I'm truly amazed at the level of talent that we have, the level of professionalism, but also the willingness that everyone in this organization has to help and share. And so Kyle is going to talk to us today about the other side of game development, which is taking the gaming technology into the enterprise. So Kyle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, John. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Sweet, perfect. So I'm Kyle Morrand, CEO and technologist of 302 Interactive. And a quick touch on 302 Interactive. We are what I would call a game studio. I get to work with a lot of talented game designers and game developers on the team that I've built over the past 5 years. But I guess a little about myself. I went to school with Sean. Did game design with Sean. We were in classes together. But I actually have like a completely different background than Sean. I've never worked at a game studio outside of my own. Never made like a commercially successful game. I haven't even, I think, developed on a normal, traditional kind of game and publish that to the market. But I still consider myself a game designer, and I have this kind of background of game design that I consider applied towards games for everything else. So if you want to go to the next slide. As a game designer, I try to make games for everything else is really my focus. And my team, while they've been able to work on different types of games, they really support and help me to make what I call contextual games. A contextual game we'll kind of get into is really a game that you take the elements and technologies of game design and apply that to the rest of the world or everything else. So we go to the next slide. So what is a game? A game is, my favorite definition, structured form of play. It's really how you take the idea of play as a human and to structurally be able to do that. I have some examples from my team on a mobile game that we made, Squire, another one, Commission. This is a grand strategy game. And then I have a sneak peek of a game that we worked on that's more about the technology itself. You go next slide. So why make contextual games? For me, really, contextual games are about discovery and learning about the rest of the world around you and the technologies, the applications, the locations, all of these different aspects of the world around us that can be discovered and enjoyed through gameplay. Gameplay really allows for an individual or a group of people to express and understand and absorb different things. And when you apply that to something like a building or healthcare or a piece of technology that you don't understand, you can really get a lot of value out of that. And it allows for a better connection for being able to enjoy that thing that you're working towards. If you go to the next slide. So for me, I really consider as a game designer, I consider the idea of that we play to discover. I think as game players, we play to really discover what we are engaging with. If it's a story that you're discovering, or if it's the ability to be able to, like in Sean's game, navigate around a virtual reality world, to be able to shoot people, or if you're learning about a new piece of the world or history or whatever it is, you really play to have that element cover. And contextual games allows you to take that concept and really apply it forward. Go to the next slide. So one of the types of contextual games, I think this is something that really for the VR and AR world has been really popular, is location. Location is a great type of contextual game because it allows you to really make experiences for the macro level of location. So if you think about like Pokemon Go, where you had thousands upon thousands of people walking around cities and parks and towns playing this game together and experiencing their world around them more than they typically would. It allowed people to get out of their house and have a reason to get out of their house and enjoy something with each other and congregate with each other and have that kind of communication with one another. But also at a micro level, it allows you to kind of engage really intently with a location like your coffee table or your conference room table, or like this example here, a wall, a mural that could be brought to life. It allows you to kind of explore and create those experiences that you typically wouldn't even really think about too much. You think about your coffee table or the floor even of your living room. You don't really think about that as a place to play a game. But if you think about when you were like 5, 6 years old playing The Floor is Lava, it can be a game if you can create that expression and create that kind of engagement. So that's one type of contextual game that we try to focus on. Go next slide. Application, I think this one is really prominent. Like John mentioned, I work a lot in enterprise technologies for games, and we've found a lot of applications. I'm sure a lot of you guys have experienced this as well, of taking game technologies, and not just the technologies, but also the concepts of game design, and bringing it to different industries. As a game designer, I've worked in healthcare, in education, attractions, marketing, tourism, simulation. We've been able to apply game design to a lot of different industries and start to really help those industries answer questions, solve problems, and really engage with their audiences and the people that they're trying to help in a unique way. Games allow you to really express and engage in a way that you can't really find any other way. But also on a lifestyle side, you can start to create applications that allow you to have more of an expression, like you see in this example here. And I think this lifestyle side of games is something that's kind of new to people, but I think it's about to really explode. I think Snapchat and Instagram are the just sort of first steps of seeing how these AR filters are being applied to just enjoying life and yourself and taking pictures of things. And I think we're really going to see a sort of social boom to where games are being applied to, whether it's your daily commute, if you're in your autonomous car in your Tesla playing a game, or if you're going from teaching your kids how to kind of grow up and learning how to raise your children, or learning how to kind of read a book, or any of those like small things that we kind of take for granted, I think can be applied, and games can be applied to those and enhanced in a really great way. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of that soon. Go to the next slide. And this one's sort of a personal one for me. I think interface as a whole is something that games really get applied to. I, as a technologist, really love to explore hardware and software. Just generally, I think the technologies themselves outside of gaming technologies, something that Kunal mentioned for like the Orlando game space, exploring these newer technologies, the frontier tech that is being created. A lot of these technologies are having I would say a hard time getting into consumers' hands, getting into the natural world. We're so used to our touchscreen smartphones that we have a hard time understanding how to wear VR glasses, or how to wear AR glasses, or do anything like natural language processing, or being able to like play with 3D spatial visualization. Those aren't natural things that we do on a daily basis for a lot of consumers. And so games allow us to really help those new technologies to be able to introduce themselves to a larger consumer base, and to somebody that doesn't necessarily understand. You can create a game to kind of express and push that concept forward, and makes it more mainstay. I think that's really I'm a big advocate of augmented reality, and Sean is my like counter, and he's a big advocate on virtual reality. I think virtual reality has done a fantastic job of introducing itself through games. I think Beat Saber and Battle Royales and all of these things have really made VR a mainstay, whereas AR, outside of Pokemon Go, hasn't really found its flow for people. It hasn't really found its adoption yet, and I think games will really help be able to do that. This is a game. I have an example here. If anybody knows the Project Tango, it's now like very old technology, sadly. It's like a really great piece of technology. But I had the opportunity at a job that I had where my boss had this Project Tango, and he put it on my desk. He said, "I don't know what this does, and I don't know what we want to do with it, but just make something." And so I ended up taking the tablet, strapping it to a PlayStation 3 gun, and just going to town with it, just playing. And we ended up making a ghost busting game where you can go and walk around and look at the floor and the walls and the ceiling and shoot ghosts. And it was fun and engaging, and it taught people how the technology worked. And I think if you were to give a kid that piece of technology, they wouldn't really understand it. But when you put into the adaptation of a game, these kids were going wild playing, and they loved it, and their parents loved it, and they were just excited about that technology moving forward. So if you go to the next slide. So I think taking things like contextual games for location, for an application like an industry, or taking it even just to focus on a particular piece of hardware or software, games have a lot of potential to really help in those different areas. But I think the more important aspect is taking those elements of play and the context that they're supporting to create an outcome. If you go to the next slide, I think that outcome is really the heart of why contextual games can be so impactful. It takes gameplay and game design far beyond just focusing on entertaining and play style, and it allows you to create an outcome for somebody that can have a really positive impact. If you go to the next slide. These are some folks that we at 302 ended up working with a few years back. This is John and Tad, and they had a really great story about how Jonathan, he, as a kid, went through a lot of physical therapy and he hated it. It was frustrating. He had to break his hand and do this a lot, and he had to go through this whole exhausting, frustrating experience as a kid, and he didn't want people to have to experience that. He wanted to be able to find ways to use these new technologies like virtual reality to have a better experience while having to go through something like physical therapy. So they ended up starting a business called Therapy, where they try to gamify physical therapy. And we had the pleasure of working with them and helping them over a couple years of building a series of games that allowed for not only the therapists to be able to engage better with the patients, but also for the patients to be able to enjoy and really want to be doing physical therapy, which is in physical therapy is a really challenging issue. They have a very large retention problem that therapy was trying to tackle. So I wanted to leave you guys on just that thought of that outcome, and we're going to play a video here so you guys can kind of just see what contextual games can really do.
Therapy being different from traditional platforms because it takes your focus off of the actual exercise. Therapy is supposed to be fun, even though you're working a lot and it may put you through pain now and again. It's supposed to be fun. And with therapy, they're able to focus more on the fun aspect while still increasing the functional performance that they need, that we need for them to reach as well. But they're able to focus their mind and divert their mind on other aspects of the actual performance rather than focusing on what the exercise is.
With therapy, I feel a lot more at ease. Like I don't have to concentrate as much on how many reps or specifically the range of motion on each rep. I feel like I can just focus more on whatever game I'm currently on.
I would recommend therapy to other outpatient centers. It's just like another type of equipment that you would have as far as like even having like an exercise bike. It's just another tool that you can use in the rehab process. Yeah, we have a patient, Ernesto, that, he'd come. He's been a patient of mine for over a year. And, he'd come and it's the traditional, he'd come in, do the same kind of routines over and over again. So, and then when therapy was introduced, it's actually, he was looking forward to it and coming in and like, hey, are we going to use this today? Like, what are we going to do? So it motivates him.
Awesome.
Okay, well, Kyle, thank you very much. Everyone join me in giving Kyle a big round of applause. There we go. Look at all those emojis. Yeah, thank you so much. I think we've done a good job of giving a couple different perspectives here of the journey to creating a commercial game, and also what we're doing in enterprise or in business with the technology. So what I'd like to do now is invite all of our panelists up. So Fraser, Sean, Kyle, Kunal, and also I'd like to introduce John Laster. So John is the founder of LasterLaw. Where are you, John? Are you still here? All right, come on up. John is probably one of the few gaming lawyers. John works out of the game space as well and helps companies that are, with their legal issues with setting up a company and understanding IP law. And so, that's a critical component of this whole ecosystem is how do you take these ideas to market and how do you protect your ideas and monetize those. So we'd like to thank John for joining us on our panel today. So this is the first time we've done a virtual panel. So let's see how we do here. So Fraser, I'm going to turn it over to you as the moderator. I'm going to get out of the way here.
Sure. So thanks, John. So, before I jump to the audience with some questions that you guys have, I had a question for Kunal and John, actually. But Kunal, I'll start with you. With the Orlando game space and the community you've built there, one of the big things, Sean talked about it, and I'm sure Kyle has had the same thing, is fundraising. So how does a place like the Orlando Game Space help them?
Oh, thank you. So yeah, in terms of fundraising, how does the game space help? Well, over the past 10 plus years that I've spent in like business and scaling companies and doing those kind of things, what I've found, and no offense to any investors that are out there, most investors are very lazy. They don't want to, I say that jokingly, they just don't have a lot of time. They don't have the, attention span anymore to go digging for information, to find out why it is that you are amazing. They've got other things to do. And so density is a really huge factor in terms of discovery for investors. So if all these companies, all these talented companies are in close proximity to each other, then it's a lot easier for an investor to say like, okay, I totally get it. I understand. I see the value. When I come to visit, I now see this company that I didn't see before. Those kind of things happen. And this happens also in terms of partners and champions, people who are connected with investors as well. So when they see all these companies like, Sean with CyberDream or Kyle 302 or John, who has his connections as well, or any of the other companies like BrandX are, they see, wow, okay, this relates to me in this way, or I know this investor that is interested in what you do, and I'm going to go and tell them. And we do the same. So basically, we make it really easy for the investors to kind of go to one place and get a view of everybody, and that just shortens the time to which, a potential investor could start interacting with the companies in the game space as well as Orlando. And this is all a thing that's improving over time.
Awesome. And then, John, from a legal perspective, the fundraising piece, but also is, the IP piece and things like that. Like, what are some of the challenges you're seeing, or some of the, tips that you would let others know that are getting into this?
Oh, for sure. And I think John actually hinted on it pretty well. And it's just, I have a background in video games. So for me, I'm just going to borrow a phrase from a very famous game. And it's just that it's kind of dangerous to go alone. At the end of the day, the people you're working with on an enterprise scale have attorneys. If you're trying to negotiate a deal with them and you're trying to protect your own IP, you need to bring someone to the table yourself, and you need to treat your business like a business. When you start getting into fundraising, it can get really complex really quickly, especially because you can be getting into securities law without even knowing it. And that's definitely an area that you're going to need help. But even just with fundraising and stuff, there are other options. Sean mentioned himself that, he was doing consulting and contracting to be able to fund part of his game. And that's definitely a very viable solution if you're having a harder time finding investment. There's a lot of different pathways that you can take. And there's a lot of things you just need to be cognizant of from day one, which includes how do you structure your company? How do we make sure that if we take on investment, it's the right kind of investment and that it's going to work long-term for us? And how do we make sure that if we bring on a publisher for a video game or even an AR or VR application, how do we make sure that that deal is going to have terms that are favorable long-term to what we're trying to accomplish?
Right. All right. Awesome. Thank you. So for those of you in the room, if you raise your hand, I will be able to unmute you and put you on air. So I see Chris. Chris Hard, you have a question, so go ahead.
Actually, I don't think I have a question. I had one earlier, but you guys answered it during the presentation, so I'm good. Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. All right. Anyone else?
Can we mute Chris? There we go.
Yeah, sorry. I did that. I had my emoji menu in the way. So, again, any questions, please raise your hand and I can unmute you. And any questions on the YouTube channel, feel free to type it in and I will relay them. So, Kyle, I'll go to you right now around the enterprise gaming space. I spent, as John mentioned, I spent a bunch of time at Verizon and in their learning what do you see the biggest difference between some of the enterprise stuff you're doing versus, traditional gaming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing is I'm not a doctor. I'm not a teacher. I'm not in the military. So, things like trying to make a game for healthcare or education or any of these aspects, I am not those people, right? And so learning not only what their experiences are, but learning their language and how to communicate with them and how to really understand what their problems and pain points are when trying to make something for a different industry, it can be a challenge. Discovering that kind of common language and really understanding from them like what they're explaining, especially when it gets down to the nitty-gritty details of like when we did physical therapy, understanding range of motion and like flexion and all of these different terms that I didn't go to medical school. I don't know what you're talking about. And then on the reverse, trying to explain to them what a game is and that it's not just like press play and it works, and that there's a lot of iteration, design, and conversation that has to go into actually making these games. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge is communication across fields. But for me, that's like my most enjoyable aspect of it.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. All right, John, since you raised your hand, Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah, this was a question for John Laster. So, I guess, I'm starting a company up. I'm building an application. I'm building a game, and I realize I need some legal advice. And we all have this fear of, oh my gosh, I got to go see a lawyer. What's that going to cost me?
Hey, John, we want you to maybe switch on your megaphone. I think that got toggled off by mistake.
Mine or John?
John Cunningham.
Yeah. So
There we
no,
go.
my question to John Laster was, these small companies that are kind of startups and they're very cash sensitive and the fear of going to see a lawyer and what that's going to cost. And I know you've got some creative ways of approaching that. Can you talk about that?
Well, for me, one of the things that's always been important for me is actually being a part of the communities that I'm doing the work for. So even being able to be a part of stuff like this has always been kind of important to me. And being able to kind of share that kind of information and hopefully kind of destigmatize some of the legal process, because I know it can be very threatening. I'm fairly honest. I don't remember the last time I did wear a suit. It was probably a sworn. So it's been a while. Because for me, a lot of what I try to do is I try to make that process a little bit easier to understand and try to make sure that I bring solutions in a somewhat creative way to kind of help out my clients the best I can. And everybody's needs are going to be different. At the end of the day, when you're starting up a company, you really do need to think through like where you're trying to go. And especially when you're dealing with more than one person starting the company, there's definitely a lot of basic documentation that really is needed, because if it's not done correctly from the start, you're going to eventually have bigger issues down the road. So my advice would be just to reach out to somebody, whether it's me or somebody else.
Yep. Thanks, John.
Sean,
Fraser, was there any other questions?
Yep, we have one here in the room. Chris, you're on air. Chris Hart, did you raise your hand again? No?
Nope.
All right. So, Sean, my question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm sorry, I'm having some UI issues here. I'm actually just curious about AltSpace VR. This is obviously the first time for several of us. It's the first time for me. Can you guys give us some history on what AltSpace VR and if any of you are connected to it, or is it just an open platform?
Sure. So, AltSpace is actually it was originally developed as a separate company, but then Microsoft bought it a while back, and so it is a Microsoft platform. It is free for anyone to use and schedule events. There's a lot, and I'll ask Steve Lewis to jump in here because there's a lot of folks in the community that develop spaces and all that sort of stuff. But it's a great place for some meetings as well.
absolutely. Thanks, Fraser. Yeah. So if you have a specific question, I'd love to try to answer that for you. But yeah, this is probably one of the largest and most active social VR communities right now. You can come into this space to enjoy events, meetings, conferences, entertainment, and there is a vast, wide variety of world builders, community creatives, and designers that are creating experiences inside AltSpace. So, Chris, I'm not sure if you had a specific question about the way that AltSpace works, but you know, those of us that are in the industry that are focused on social virtual reality, you know, this is our preferred platform right now in terms of the robust ability to do multi-user, multiplayer, interactable, and immersive experiences. So.
Yeah, and I would encourage any of you that want to connect or learn more to definitely friend Steve here in the room, because he will be able to give you a whole bunch of tips and tricks and help you out with what you might be wanting to do.
So I think on a you know, in line with that comment, I think one of the reactions I think a lot of people are going to have when they look at this is like, oh my gosh, this looks so cartoony. Why can't avatars be like real humans and look? Because when you look on some of the advertising sites, some of these venues look real. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, they actually did just push an update to the avatars that's going to be going live soon. It just hasn't gone live yet, so it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how that evolves.
Yeah, and you know, John, there's a few other platforms as well, not as open and as free as these. So there's Engage. In fact, they just signed a big contract with HTC as part of their VR suite. But Engage and a number of other platforms that actually use spatial. You might have heard some news about recently. They actually use images of, you know, you take a picture of yourself, so they have more regular street clothes looking avatars, and then it's using your face, which is kind of cool because it shows the expression and that, and so it gives it even more immersion in there. And there's quite a few that are starting to pop up, and you know, again, Steve knows a lot, and myself, I play a lot in it as well. But you know, there are some where this one seems a little more cartoony, but as John said, there's new avatars coming out. Some of the others do, you know, spatial is kind of crazy because it works actually with MR devices as well. So like HoloLens and the Nreal that's coming out. And so you could actually have people in your office, in your home, and all that sort of stuff as their avatars are floating around. So there's kind of some cool stuff there.
Well, I definitely think, you know, one thing that we've seen with COVID is this massive adoption of folks using video technology like Zoom. Folks that we never thought would agree to using it now are very comfortable with it. So now these VR platforms come along. How long do we think it is going to be before this becomes the replacement for something like a Zoom?
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
I mean, you know, I'd like to actually, if you don't mind, direct that to Sean, because he has built this battle royale, so he understands the difficulties of building multi-person stuff. So, Sean, you know, what are your thoughts on the multi-person and that sort of thing?
So replacing Zoom. So I don't think it's so much like a technical limitation. So this is actually kind of relevant for us too beyond that, because we are working on some social platform stuff, and Virtual Battlegrounds is inherently social. We do actually have like a kind of lobby, kind of like this room before you jump into a match where everyone's playing basketball and messing around with guns and hanging out with each other before going into a match. But I think it's more of a accessibility and friction issue. I think realistically, I do think that things like Zoom will be replaced, absolutely. But I don't think the majority of people are going to be doing it in the next 5 years. I think it's kind of like, I kind of see VR right now as kind of like where the computer was in the 80s, and we're going to be like the old people, right, when our kids are all playing VR all the time. That is what I think the future is going to be. And I think we're closer to that. I think we'll start seeing a shift in the next 10 years. I think the next 10 years is when we're going to see a lot of people start shifting, especially younger people, into VR. And I think some older people will too as well, like early adopters and people like myself that are technology enthusiasts. But I do think it's going to be a kind of a generational shift. I could be wrong, but that's my first thought.
Well, I can also see the integration. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that we have a question from Game On, so I was going to.
Yep.
Game On, you're live and unmuted. Nope. You still there? Still have your question? No. Okay. Sorry, John. You can.
Nope. No, I was just, I guess, in line of the discussion, this is, so I think for our members out there, we've selected this platform for this event and to try it, and would love to get everyone's feedback. And I think in future events, we're going to try different platforms as well. As they, in fact, I think John Gress had an idea of one that he wanted to try, so that we can give our community the opportunity to try a few different platforms. So please do give us our feedback, and what you thought.
All right, awesome. And then Game
Okay.
On, I saw you raised your hand again. You're here to ask a question? Okay.
Game On
So-
is on mute, maybe? Not on mute?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, again, anyone else have
Any other
questions? You
questions?
can jump in, or if not,
Why don't we maybe just kind of open up the room? We've got about 5 minutes left, and we
Yeah,
can probably just kind of open up the floor. I can turn off the stage blocker, and we'll
Yeah.
kind of give everybody an opportunity to maybe mingle. We can turn off our megaphones, and if everybody wants to take a selfie, we can maybe get everybody to the front of the room, and we'll do like one big giant group photo. That would be awesome. And
Yeah,
so
come on
I'm
up here,
actually going to
everyone.
go ahead
Come
and
on up
turn
on stage.
off the stage blocker right now. I'm going to unmute everyone so that we kind of have an open room. And why don't we just give everyone a round of applause? All of our guest speakers today, our host John Cunningham from the Virtual Reality and AR chapter here in Orlando. I think that this was a really great show, and I especially want to recognize Frazier, John Laster, Kyle, and Sean and Kunal. Great show, everybody. Thank you all very much. If we want to get everybody, let me go ahead and turn off the stage blocker.
And Steve, thank you and your team for making this happen. So there are a number of people behind the scenes that no one got to see or hear. So thank you all for your time. They're all volunteers, so really appreciate it.
So if
All right, everyone
anybody
that's in the room, come
was
on up.
interested, I am Alistair here inside of VR, but my name is Steve Lewis, and I work for Super Productions. We are an event production company that produces shows inside of virtual reality. I'm going to go ahead. It looks like we've got a nice group put together here. So let me change my screen around here. I'm going to take a nice picture. So everybody put their hands above their head. And I'm going to set the
And don't
screen.
worry about the
Bear with me.
teleprompter. It won't be in the picture. So
All right, it is 1